I actually work for Wayside now, but I found it really great to actually be asked to come along and talk today about something that's so intangible. We're in a society that is so focused on objectives, and I just think this idea of together, it's such an intangible subject, and it seems we know it when we feel it, but the more you try to kind of grasp at it, the more it gets further away from you. So I think the easiest way for me to talk about it is what we talk about at Wayside, and it's this idea of community. And I've got to say, my personal journey into the community at Wayside, it's not something that I'd actually planned. I grew up on the North Shore. We referenced ourselves as hardcore North Shore. I think it's a bit of an oxymoron, but I grew up pretty protected and not really wanting for actually anything. And King's Cross wasn't the area where I thought I'd end up working, let alone in a service that deals with people every day who are homeless, who have substance abuse issues, who have mental health issues. And for me, it started because I was at uni and I was an art student, and like a lot of art students, I had these great ideas about how the world should be. And I went to a dinner one night and I was sat opposite a guy I knew from growing up and his girlfriend. And this girlfriend of this guy I knew and I started having this amazing talk about social justice and what should be going on. And it got to the end of the conversation and I thought we'd had this great discussion, and she turned around and said, "Well, do you actually do anything?" And I was kind of taken aback because I had all these beliefs and I kind of thought that was enough, but obviously she didn't. So she turned around and said that she volunteered at this place called Wayside and I should come in the following week. I came in the following week, I started volunteering, I now work there, and it's 5 years later. And one of the funny things about being part of the Wayside community now is I distinctly remember one of the first times I walked into Wayside and I saw a guy and I just was petrified of him. This is a guy who'd been sleeping rough for over a decade. He had drug and alcohol issues. He had sleeves of tats up both arms. He had long hair, a massive beard. His teeth kind of weren't in the best condition, and he was a guy who had a bit of a gruff kind of persona. And he wasn't the sort of person that I was used to hanging out with. And at that stage, he was probably the sort of person that I would have actively tried to avoid. But this guy Albie, over my years at Wayside, I've gotten to know. And we've become together as part of the community at Wayside. And he's a guy that when I see him of a morning, he used to kind of call me over and he always used to like to make a bit of a quip about me because he kind of thinks I'm inappropriately dressed for Wayside most of the time. So he calls me over normally and goes, "Hey, X Factor," because he reckons I look like I'm going to a boy band audition. So we always have a bit of a chat, but actually I did want to say he has his very own particular dress style where everything he wore was always worn with a pair of Manly football socks. Now, not everything at Wayside moves quickly. We're a bit antiquated like that. We've got this philosophy at Wayside of trying to make a community that doesn't have an idea of us and them. So you've got to have trust, you've got to have respect, and it's got to go both ways. So sometimes we see people making decisions that we may not think is the best idea. Sometimes we see people making decisions that we think are bad ideas, but we have to respect that. That being said though, it means when someone makes a good decision, we can celebrate it all the much more. And Albie, over the past year, had made massive gains. A major part of this was because he'd become part of our Aboriginal mob at Wayside. He was being supported by our Aboriginal worker, a lady named Mon. He got into stable housing for the first time in about 20 years, and he was an active part of our community. Now, the really strange thing about community and together is it's so hard to grasp when you think it's there. But when it's gone, you're acutely aware of its absence. And we recently lost Albie. We lost a member of our community. And this brings me to the next slide, which are his socks. They're the Manly football socks. And our Aboriginal worker, Mon, took this photo when she was clearing out Albie's place. They represent so much in terms of what together means. There are all these sayings of pull your socks up and pull yourself together, and I don't think they could be better represented than by this photo. Those socks were worn so often, and when he was on the street, they were so rarely washed. Mon used to say they'd be able to walk away by themselves. But there they were in Albie's house. They were freshly washed by him, hanging on his makeshift clothesline. And for us, it was the perfect example of someone who, despite what his life was previously, had managed to pull himself together. He'd managed to pull himself together because he felt part of something, and he was part of that intangible but also important feeling of being together with others. Thank you.